You know, I was looking through some of the stuff you sent about language and thought, and it really hit me how finding a new word can almost like change how you see things.
Mm,
I remember when I first heard serendipity, suddenly it felt like these little happy accidents were everywhere.
right. You had a name for it.
Exactly. And then saudade, that Portuguese word. For that nostalgic longing, it just unlocked this whole different way of feeling things I hadn't really noticed before. It really
Yeah,
shows language isn't just like labels, it shapes how you perceive things.
that's a perfect way to put it. It taps right into this idea that Benjamin Lee Whorf talked about, the linguistic relativity hypothesis.
Okay, right.
The core idea, basically, is that the language we speak influences, maybe even some argue, determines how we think and see reality.
Hmm.
It's complex, definitely debated still, but that link between language and thought is key.
It's funny you mentioned that link. I actually remember the very first time I dreamt, like entirely in English. Yeah, it was totally surreal. Like, whoa, my subconscious is running on this now. It wasn't just a tool anymore. It felt like a whole different way of thinking.
Hmm.
And that's really what we want to dive into today, isn't it? How learning and using English, even just a bit, can sort of subtly rewire your worldview and give you these unexpected, well, benefits.
Exactly. And one of the clearest impacts to that rewiring is on our cognition, specifically how we make decisions.
Decisions. How so?
Well, there was this pretty interesting study from the University of Chicago. They looked at bilingual people making choices,
Okay.
and they found that people tended to make more, well, rational decisions when they use their second language compared to their native one.
Really? That's fascinating. How did they figure that out?
They use these scenarios, designed to hit your emotional buttons. Like,
Yeah.
they might ask, okay, would you rather have $50 right now or $100 in a year?
Oh, the classic test. Most people want the $50 now, right? Impulsive.
Exactly. But when they asked the same bilingual folks the question in their second language, more of them actually chose the $100 later. They weighed the long-term gain more.
Huh. So why is that?
The thinking is, processing in a non-native language engages slightly different, maybe more controlled cognitive pathways. It creates a bit of emotional distance.
So using that second language, English perhaps, gives you a little space, allows for more logical thinking, less gut reaction.
Precisely. A more deliberate look at the situation. And this whole language-shaping thought thing, it goes way beyond just decision-making. Think about untranslatable words.
Oh, I love those. Words that just don't have a perfect match in English.
Exactly. They capture a specific cultural idea or feeling that another language might need a whole sentence to explain.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take the Finnish word sisu.
Sisu. Okay.
It's often translated as grit or determination, but it's more than that. It's this, like, extraordinary perseverance against the odds, stoic endurance. Picture someone, finishing a marathon, totally wiped out, but just refusing, absolutely refusing to quit. That's sisu.
Wow. I can almost picture that. It's not just being tough, it's like this deep, stubborn inner strength. A powerful idea. We could all use some sisu.
Right. And then you have something totally different, like the Japanese word komortabi.
Kumoryabe.
It describes that specific, beautiful effect of sunlight filtering through the leaves of trees.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's not just the light, not just the leaves, but that specific interplay, the dappled light dancing on the ground.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It makes you notice that specific kind of fleeting beauty, like the language itself values that moment.
Exactly. And what's so cool is how these words give you a little window into different cultural ways of seeing the world, what a culture thinks is important enough to name so precisely.
So it's not just vocabulary, it's a whole cultural lens that comes with the language. And that lens must affect how we communicate too, right? I definitely notice myself phrasing things differently in English sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Language deeply influences communication styles. Think about diplomacy, or even just resolving disagreements.
How so?
Well, imagine in one language, the most direct way to say something is, well, pretty blunt, like, you're wrong,
Yeah, that doesn't always go over well.
right? But English often offers ways to soften that directness. It has more tools, for indirectness.
Like instead of "you're wrong," you might say, have you considered this other angle?" Or "I see it a bit differently." Much gentler.
Exactly that. English has a lot of what linguists call hedging devices, ways to phrase things more cautiously, more indirectly. It can be really useful for navigating sensitive topics, building rapport, less confrontational.
It makes you think, doesn't it? Maybe for you listening, think about a time English let you say something difficult more smoothly.
It's definitely worth reflecting on. And, these cognitive shifts, these new cultural viewpoints, they can lead to some really big personal changes. We actually heard a story about this. May.
Ah, yes, May's story. She learned English later in life, right? And certain words just sparked something. We hear about this kind of thing from listeners sometimes, especially that feeling of invisible progress. But May's story is about something clicking.
It's amazing, isn't it, how just simple vocabulary words can sometimes be the catalyst for huge personal growth.
It really is. So May was, I think, 52, working at a dry cleaner's. And as she's learning English, she comes across the word alteration.
For clothes, right?
Yeah, for clothes. But the word stuck with her. Alteration. It made her think bigger about life alteration. And that thought actually pushed her to go back to college.
Wow, just from that one word.
And another one, the word press, like pressing clothes, evolved in her mind into the phrase press on, like keep going. It became her mantra. Now she's a social worker helping other immigrants.
That is such a powerful example. Language providing new ways to frame your own life, your own potential.
Totally. And honestly, even just teaching English has changed me. I remember trying to explain patience to like a 3-year-old asking why for the 15th time.
Oh, I can imagine.
Or this teenager who just could not get the difference between fun and funny for months.
Yeah.
Trying to teach it, explain it, it kind of forced me to practice more patience myself.
That's a fantastic insight. The act of engaging with a concept through language, it doesn't just define it for others, it reinforces it in you. It's reciprocal.
Yeah. And these benefits of learning English, they go beyond just thinking differently or seeing new perspectives. There are these like hidden skills you pick up almost without realizing it.
Right. It's not just about the language itself. The process builds things.
Absolutely. Just think about trying to talk when you don't know all the words. Every single time you manage to get your point across, even if it's awkward, every time you kind of survive that conversation, that's proof you can handle discomfort, handle uncertainty. It builds resilience, right?
That's a great way to put it, like building up emotional muscle through these little linguistic workouts.
And let's face it, being a beginner again, especially when you're an adult, it can be incredibly humbling.
Oh, for sure.
I think about my grandma learning to use a tablet in her 70s. Seeing her struggle, it gave me so much more empathy for anyone learning something new. English can do that too. Remind you what it feels like to be on that learning curve.
That's a really powerful connection. Recognizing that shared experience of learning, no matter the age or what you're learning. Humility.
And then there's creativity. When you don't have the perfect word, you have to find another way.
You get resourceful.
Yeah. It's like that game describes snow without saying cold, white, or winter.
Okay.
You have to focus on like the texture, the sound, how it feels hitting your face. Language learning forces you to think outside the usual boxes.
It really is like CrossFit for your personality muscles. You're stretching and strengthening adaptability, empathy, creativity, all these things.
Totally. CrossFit for your personality. I like that. And these skills, they don't just stay in the language learning zone, do they? They spill over.
How do you mean?
Well, think about uncertainty at work. Maybe leading a project where you don't have all the answers yet. If you can navigate a conversation in English without knowing every single word, maybe that shows you can lead even with some ambiguity.
That's a crucial parallel.
Yeah.
The confidence you build communicating despite not being perfect, that absolutely translates to tackling other challenges where you don't have the full picture.
Or think about how we are with little kids learning to talk.
Okay.
We use tons of repetition, right?
Right.
And we don't shame them for messing up. We celebrate when they finally say dog, even if it sounds like gog.
Right. We cheer the small wins.
We need to give ourselves that same grace learning English. Celebrate those little breakthroughs, those micro successes. Don't beat yourself up.
that self-compassion, that positive reinforcement, it's vital for any kind of learning, really.
So here's a little challenge maybe for you listening. This week, just pick one problem, one tricky situation, and try approaching it like a language learner.
How so?
Be curious about it, experiment with different approaches, and be kind to yourself if it doesn't work out perfectly the first time.
I love that, applying that learner's mindset consciously.
Mm.
And, that connects to some things we often hear from listeners about their own experiences,
Mm.
like that feeling of invisible progress.
Ah, yes, that comes up a lot. You feel like you're working so hard, but are you actually getting better? What do you say to that?
What's interesting is that progress isn't always, a smooth upward line. It's often not obvious day to day.
Right.
So I'd suggest really try to spot those micro understandings. Did you finally get a joke you missed before? Did you pick up on a subtle nuance in how someone said something?
Focus on the small stuff.
Yeah, those little wins are the progress. Acknowledge them.
That's good advice. We also hear from people who say learning English has actually, maybe surprisingly, helped with anxiety.
Yeah, there's some fascinating research bubbling up there. A study back in 2017, I think from Geneva, suggested that the process of learning a new language might actually help regulate the amygdala.
The fear center in the brain.
Exactly. Engaging with a whole new system, new rules, new sounds.
Mm.
It seems to build new neural pathways, potentially making the brain a bit more resilient to anxiety triggers.
Wow, so it's brain health too, not just communication skills.
Yeah.
Okay, and one more thing we hear sometimes is this worry about losing your identity as you get better at English.
That's a really common concern and understandable, but maybe we can reframe it.
Yeah.
Instead of losing an identity, think of it as layering identities. Becoming fluent in English or any language doesn't erase who you were. It adds another dimension, right? Another lens to see the world through.
So it enriches you rather than takes away.
Exactly. It adds perspective. You're not just adding words. You're gaining almost a new way of seeing, becoming, bi-perspectival maybe.
Bi-perspectival. I like that. It's an addition, not a subtraction. That's really helpful. And hey, speaking of perspectives, if you listening have had your own transformation through learning English, we'd genuinely love to hear about it.
Definitely.
You could even record a voice question or share your story, and maybe we can talk about it in a future deep dive.
Absolutely. Those personal stories are so powerful. They really show the incredible range of impacts language learning can have.
For sure. So as we start to wrap this up, maybe a few concrete things you can try.
Let's do it.
Okay, first, maybe try this journal prompt. What did handling language frustration teach me about handling life frustration? Just jot down some thoughts.
Good one. Connecting the skills.
Second, try finishing this sentence for yourself. My superpower is because I learned English. What strength did it give you?
Ooh, I like that. Identifying the positive takeaway.
And finally, let's just normalize the struggle a bit.
Hmm.
This week, maybe make a point to tell one person, could be anyone, today I messed up in English or life.
Yeah.
And here's what I learned from it.
Yeah, sharing the process, the learning from mistakes. These are great, simple ways to integrate the experience.
Because really, when you learn another language, you're not just becoming bilingual.
Right.
You're becoming bi-perspectival. And honestly, that's a kind of superpower nobody can ever take away from you.